Oh, it's Super Bowl Sunday, so I'm throwing in with the Chiefs because of Patrick Mahomes. I'm a Texas Tech guy, so that's the reason I'm wearing Chiefs stuff today, which is fitting because I know that this question is from somebody in that area. Okay. So what are the obligations of a Board of Education being knowledgeable about disability-related civil rights laws such as IDEA, 504, ADA? Is there a fiduciary duty to be knowledgeable of these laws? You would think so, but you would have to check your individual state laws and also State Board of Education policies. What I do know is that they, have training programs with regards to special education, 504, and supposedly boards and administration go through training constantly. But the big question is, what kind of training? Who's doing the training? Is it extending to boards of education? I mean, the biggest source of my business remains principals. If it wasn't for principals, I might have to become a farmer. Principals really do drive my business. Why is that? Well, because they end up screwing up so often, not because they're mean-spirited, but because they do not understand all of the nuances and all of the nooks and crannies of these laws and these protections. And then so many of them have a screwed up hierarchy understanding. And I'm talking not even an understanding, but in real world practice, to where the hierarchy is not operating like I feel like it should, or like I think that the IDEA wishes it was envisioned. Because if it was done the way that I think it should be viewed, then I think we would have a much different system. But most of the time, it is the superintendent, and then the principals, and then the special ed director way out here in freaking no man's land where nobody cares. That's just sort of...
An idiot is attempting to reach you on your cellular device. An idiot is attempting to reach you on your cellular device.
Yes. Yeah. No, I'm explaining that right now, that, you guys don't have to really do any competency-based training on understanding of the law. I'll mention that, but yeah, okay, right, see ya. Okay, you see, it's just, I get these kind of calls all the time when I'm making the video, and I have people respectfully disagreeing with me that they feel like they are trained when they're not. But look, and guys, this is just plastic, it's not real. Okay, these are props. All right, just get used to it. Do I wish it was like that? And let me tell you, this is a little story, okay? I years ago, when I was plowing my way through college, I worked for Southwest Airlines. Great company, wonderful company, loved my time at Southwest Airlines. And I will tell you that in the department that I worked in, which was technical, in that it was sort of an internal air traffic control aspect of Southwest Airlines, known as operations. But within that department, I had to go through, I can't even tell you how many recurrent trainings once a year. And they were at the computer, and they were, if I did not pass it with flying colors, but I had to redo it every year. And there was a file on me, that the FAA, that the federal government would look at to ensure that I remained in compliance. Now, why we're not mandating that? Because we're handing state and federal governmental funds to these boards of education and to these schools to distribute, to hold for our kids and for their benefit, because we're also finding out that some of these states are misusing and misappropriating special education funds. Now, how are they doing that? Well, they're doing it because, let's say their football coach gets a base teacher salary, and then they want to pay the football coach another $40,000 a year. Well, how do they do that? Well, they make the football coach a Title I aid. So they're able to take from Title I and end up supplementing, and then they end up pulling from another area by designating him in let's say as a grant writer for IDEA funds. Well, you're able to pay employees as grant writers. Now, are they really writing grants? I mean, come on, is this really that complicated? But what they're doing is they're able to siphon away money to sit there and supplement a salary that has nothing to do with the special education kids, the support that they need, and the level of services, because it's not a priority. Like I said, the hierarchy: superintendent tends to be special ed, or the principals, and then special ed director way out here in no man's land. Whereas it should be superintendent, special ed director, and then principals. And then there should be an accounting system, and there should be the Board of Education should be having to be. You say knowledgeable. I agree with knowledgeable. Now, I think the superintendent, the special education director, and the principals should have to meet a standard of competency in these laws, which is a different standard. And that's what the money's for, my friends, because you guys aren't hurting. I know what most of you are making, and it's way more than the teachers. So that's what the money's for. You want this to, you gotta sort of put in the effort. But what I also don't like is I don't like that this is a one-sided perspective, that most of the training is being done either by the Department of Education or by board attorneys. And I think that some of this training should be coming from parent attorneys like myself, to be able to sit there and share the perspective of how I am looking at this law, or how I interpret IEPs and how I deconstruct IEPs. Because if you know how I'm thinking about it and how I'm analyzing, then it opens up the avenue of opportunity in what the IDEA can do. Most board attorneys, unfortunately, are really looking at it as, from a much different perspective of how not to stub your toe, or if you do, or even some of them are evil and are just trying to teach you how to skirt and how to shave corners and how to provide the minimal. And that's just not, if you want to avoid due process, then you need to sit there and look at it through the perspective of parent attorneys, because we're the only ones that can hurt you, and clean your clock with regards to serving the child in the way that I believe that the law dictates. I'm not here to teach you how to shave corners. I'm here to teach you how to maximize the resources that we do have, and then protect those resources so they're not being pulled away to sit there and pay for these nonsensical stuff that has nothing to do with education. But you're going to have to change. You're going to have to sit there and look at your rules as far as whether or not, they're going to have far more training in IDEA than they are in 504 or ADA, period. Far more training in IEP implementation. But like I said, there's a difference between knowledgeable, and I think Board of Education knowledgeable, the rest of them to a competency level. And I think that in order for them to maintain their jobs, it should be on a yearly recurrent basis that they have to meet that standard. So I looked at the rest of your question, and I basically answered it, wrapped up in there. But I appreciate the question. It's one I haven't answered before, really. Go Cheese.